Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Sunday Night Sports Guys. My name is Troy Nickerson, otherwise known as Duke. And this week, the Dukester is going solo on the Sunday Night Sports Guys. T-Mac and T-Blades both out tonight. We really tried our best to try to get everybody focused in and locked in for a date this week here. But obviously we know what time of the year it is. Old Santa Claus is making his appearance here tomorrow night. So a lot of family things going on. So those two are both out tonight with family commitments. But as we like to say, the show must go on. So Duke happened to have the night freed up. And nonetheless, we will try to get this done and see what everybody had to say in terms of the power rankings of the NFL. We'll talk briefly about the Toronto Blue Jays and their latest acquisition, and a bit of a look at the Boston Bruins and a little NHL to see what's going on there. So hope everybody's doing well tonight. Hope you're all getting ready for Christmas, that everything's going well with you and your family. I know it's definitely going to be a great one for us this year with our granddaughter. Her first Christmas and that. She's going to be around 6 months old, around the 8th of January. So, you know, she's not quite to where she can rip and tear and all that good stuff that we like to watch the children do and things. But she's getting a bit of a feel that something special is happening. So we're really looking forward to that. So as we like to do each week, we're going to crack open a cold one and get right into the show. And we are going to do our power rankings. I did get the boys to pass along their thinking and what they thought coming into the final week of the National Football League. Week 16's behind us. And before we do get started, we have to give a shout out to old Sebastian, the old buddy. He's here, Sebastian Bach. He's with us today as well. So anyway, let's get right into her. Double dipping here on the tech side of it. Power rankings, where are we? Mac, Bladesy, and Duke. And so we're going to go start right off the bat with number one, and what pretty well has been a unanimous pick after, we would say, probably the fourth or fifth week, once the Ravens started making it pretty well known that they were going to be the team to beat, especially after their victory over the New England Patriots. They haven't looked back, and they have held this number one spot for quite some time. The Ravens, what can you say about them? Lamar Jackson's just had a great year, MVP year. It's no doubt about that right now. He will be the National Football League's most valuable player. And he's just a very, he's a bit more dimensional than Pat Mahomes was last year. And I mean, Mahomes was a great story last year of what, he did with Kansas City. Just the way he played the quarterback position, making throws from, almost any crazy angle that you could imagine. And but this year it's Lamar Jackson making a name for himself, and along with a great running game that that the Ravens have, along with Ingram, and that defense, which hasn't been the typical type of Baltimore Ravens defense that we've seen in years past. This hasn't been the big sack-happy Ravens that we've known back in the Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs type days, and but nonetheless, still one of the top-rated defenses, and, as has always been a recipe for the two Super Bowls that the Ravens have won, run the ball and play stellar defense. And this time it's much the same. Jackson adds a huge part of that running game. Great legs as a quarterback. I think the jury is still out on him in terms of being able to throw when it really, really matters. They got a game this week. Who are they playing? Not that it means anything, but Baltimore's playing Pittsburgh. The game does mean something to the Steelers, in which we'll get into a little bit later with the best of the rest. But for Baltimore, it's more or less a tune-up, and then a couple of weeks off before they'll host, either Houston or Buffalo in their first round game. And nonetheless, that's not something that they should take for granted, especially if it's Houston, who has been to the playoffs before. It's all a different ball game. You can have the great season, as we saw from Mahomes last year, but ultimately when it gets down to the crunch time, does all facets of your game realize this and be able to click at the same time. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens with Baltimore as they go into, the playoffs this year as the number 1 seed in the AFC. Again, they rightfully deserve it. They've beaten all the teams that they need to beat to hold on to that position. But different animal when you get into that playoffs. And you know what? If Tom Brady and the New England Patriots come visiting to Baltimore for that AFC conference championship game, how are they going to react to that? Right? Can they handle that kind of pressure? Would the mystique of the Patriots overcome it? But we'll get to the Patriots a little bit later on. So they've been our consensus pick of number 1. And, barring nothing stupid happening, they should finish the year at number 1 as well. So down with that one there. Bear with me a little bit. It's always a little easier when I have the other guys talking because I can be kind of clicking and doing that while they're having their say. Now, Mac and Bladesy at number 2 chose to go with the New Orleans Saints. Now, I'm not going to speak on their behalf. We really didn't get a chance to discuss it too much in our Skype chat and things like that. I think you just have to go with the fact that, much of what they said last week, Breeze is back with the team. He's showing no ill effects of the injury he sustained. Here's, the wide receiver who's had another great year. For them, they can run the ball as well. Their defense has kind of backed off a little bit, New Orleans has, compared to where it was in the first of the year. So I think for me, that's kind of why I opted to go with the Niners in this position. I know the Niners have kind of come back after that loss to Atlanta, beat LA, on Saturday, and they look like the Niners that we've come to learn can be a real good team who have come a long ways. And I'll tell you, I really like George Kittle for the 49ers. He reminds me so much of Rob Gronkowski. He has that persona about him, that flamboyancy, but he's also very, very good. He's a good blocker, but an excellent pass catcher as well, and he certainly makes a big difference in that offense, which is spearheaded by Jimmy Garoppolo. Of course, Garoppolo coming from the Patriots, very familiar with what a tight end can do in that kind of system, and Kittle just really, really blends in well for Garoppolo. But they looked really good the other night. Another tough offense. I mean, the Rams are a team removed from the Super Bowl 1 year, and now they're not even going to be back in the playoffs. But still a very good offensive team. I have to wonder if they're really, Jared Goff, what can you say? I mean, that guy went from the numbers he had last year to leading that team to the Super Bowl, signs the gigantic contract, him and Carson Wentz, and jeez, I don't know. Year number 1 hasn't given back on the investment. Let's put it that way. So, big off season for the Rams to see what happens. But the Niners did play well, and they held on. It was a close game. It was a playoff style game because they're jockeying for position, trying to win the division. The Rams were trying to get into the playoffs, and so the game had a lot of meaning. And to me, I think the Niners rebounded and look like the team that they've come to form themselves into. So that's kind of why I went with them at number 2. Number 3, the boys opted to go with the Kansas City Chiefs, and I can understand that. Chiefs are 1 game behind the Patriots. They're behind the Saints as well and the Niners, and tied with Seattle. I chose to go with the Saints in that spot. They're still a top 3 team, the Saints. Like I said, you could flip-flop them. There is the argument that these guys would have had for the Saints at number 2 would have been great. But to me, I just kind of thought right now, as we've kind of determined the neutral field thing, I don't see the Saints beating the 49ers. I really don't. These guys have took the Chiefs. A little surprised they both went with the Chiefs in that position. I'm trying to remember. I think Bladesy might have had him there last week as well. He might have bumped him up. But the Chiefs have gotten better defensively. They're starting to buy into Steve Spagnuolo's, defense sort of thing, and that makes a huge difference. They look a little bit more continuity than they did when they were in the AFC Championship game last year. And so who knows? I mean, they definitely have a team that can make a run for sure. I mean, to come as close as you did last year. It's not like, this team, unlike the Rams, has held in there despite an injury to Mahomes. They've been able to, keep their head up, keep above water, and to push on. So they've gone with the Kansas City Chiefs at number 3. For number 4, they opted to drop down the Niners to there. I went with the Packers at number 4. Packers not getting a whole lot of love, and I'm not sure why. I mean, being objective, when you do these power rankings, you try to keep your emotions and your feelings about teams aside, which I think we've done a pretty good job over this year. This is the first year of us trying to do a power rankings with the NFL season, and I think it's gone pretty decent. I've liked how it's worked itself out. I think we have been fairly objective. I know some people think that maybe the Patriots shouldn't have got as much love as they did, but we understand the schedule definitely played into their favor to get them where they are right now. But they were the defending Super Bowl champions, and then once that loss occurred with the Ravens, that's when we started dropping them, right? So I think we've been pretty fair. The Packers were out of the top 5 for a little bit and then brought back in. I think they're playing tonight against Minnesota, which is a huge game that has division consequences on that. My apologies for not checking that into that. I'm not sure what happens if Minnesota wins, if they are ahead in the division, or if they're just tied with Green Bay still holding the tiebreaker. I'm not sure on that. Have to look that one up. So anyway, Packers are still, they're still what we talked about last week. They can run the ball. Their defense is one of the top ones in the NFC, and Aaron Rodgers still gets things done. Right, he's still, a guy who's won a Super Bowl, so we have to give him full marks. And he's got some talent around him now. Different coach, different philosophy, and so Green Bay is definitely a team that you can't take for granted when it comes to playoffs. And none of these teams. I mean, when you look at the whole setup of the playoffs this year, with the exception of the NFC East and maybe one of the wild cards in the AFC. It's like terrible. Those spots there aren't that good. But after that, a lot of those teams you can pretty well flip a quarter, and you could be right in taking any of those. So down at number 5 is kind of where everybody kind of differed a little bit, especially with Mac and Bladesy. You would think probably at times we get together on these things and decide together that we're picking the way we pick, but it isn't. Each guy has the chance to figure out what he thinks and place his teams where he wants them play. So at number 5, Mac went with the Patriots, and so I have to say I was a bit surprised. One thing about Mac, I don't know who's the bigger homer, T-Mac or Bladesy. I guess I'll leave that for you guys to figure out which is more of the the homer of those two. So anyhow, Bladesy went with the Packers, which kind of surprised me a little bit. I thought he might have snuck the Patriots in there. I dropped the Chiefs down below and put them out at 5th. Now I think with the Patriots being outside of the top 5, or at least for Bladesy and I, right now looking at everything, do I think the Patriots could beat any of those 5 teams on a neutral field? And I have to say I really don't. I don't see that happening right at the moment. They've won 2 games in a row, one against Cincinnati, worst team in football. So, that's kind of, and they really kind of struggled against them in that first half of that game. They did look a bit better on Saturday against a Bills team that has Had a great year. They're going to make the playoffs for the first time, and God only knows when. I still, the quarterback position, Josh Allen, still has to show that he has, a bit more moxie than what he has. I think that game helped kind of show some flaws for Buffalo. Now, they're going to have some time to be able to, kind of change things around, because it does look like they're going to be playing Houston in the first round. So they're going to have some time to do some scouting, on the Houston Texans, and kind of, take into consideration what this game with New England meant. I mean, this is twice they've played New England this year. They've lost 2 again, which has often been the case in the past 20 years. And so it may prove to be a good thing for Buffalo, because they may learn a lot from it. And we'll see what happens once we get to the first round of the playoffs. And that for the Patriots, they have to win next Sunday against Miami. And let me tell you something. The way this season's going, I would not take anything lightly where the NFL is concerned this year. Because as you remember, last year down in Miami was the Miami Miracle. And it was a miracle. The Pats should have won that game. They had that game, and just totally special teams fell apart on that particular play. They overthought it coaching-wise with putting Gronkowski out there, blah, 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 blah. But they ended up losing it anyway. This team in Miami, as bad as it was at the first of the year, has gotten better. They have competed harder in the latter part of the year. And with that former Patriots defensive signal caller down there in Miami, you got to know he's going to try to get them boys amped up coming into Foxborough on Sunday. So that game means a lot to the Patriots, and that's exactly what Belichick told his boys after the game on Sunday, that every game's a playoff game from here on out. You do need to win that game on Sunday to hold on to that number 2 seed, so you don't have to play in the the division playoffs next week, the week after, I should say. Excuse me. And that's going to be huge. You definitely want to avoid playing Tennessee or Pittsburgh in the first round. You don't want to have to play that third extra game. That's something the Patriots haven't done for a long, long time, having to try to go 3 games to make it to the Super Bowl, right? So it is a huge game, and not one that they should take lightly. They played tough against Miami did against Cincinnati, and they come away with the win. Cincinnati played tough against New England a couple weeks ago. So, I mean, it's not a slam dunk. It should be. The Patriots will be favored to win that game, but you can't take anything for granted where the NFL is concerned. And I guarantee you, Belichick will not allow to happen what happened last year in Miami. So that's kind of how the top 5 finished up this year. We'll look at next week. Hopefully the boys will be back in their chair to weigh in on the playoffs and things like that. See what happens there. There's a lot of Karen must be making something with cake. Do a lot of baking up there. Rolling pin. As long as she doesn't come down here, I'll be good. But we'll move along to what we like to call the best of the rest. And some of the other games, just to comment on briefly, the Cowboys and the Eagles played this past weekend in Philadelphia. And, I think most of us kind of thought, the 3 of us thought that, the Cowboys would somehow come away with winning the NFC East. That might still happen, but it's highly unlikely. The Eagles beat the Cowboys in Philadelphia. With this upcoming week, the Eagles are playing the Giants. The Cowboys are playing the Redskins, because as usual with the National Football League, everybody finishes off playing in their division. I really don't see the Eagles losing to the Giants. And you have to tip your hat to the Eagles. I mean, as much as I know Blasey was not a big fan of the Eagles at all. I think he's still smarting a bit from that Super Bowl loss. But they were really banged up this weekend in that game against Dallas. And you know what? I don't know what it speaks to. Is either do you give props to the Eagles for the effort that they gave, or is it more disappointment on the Cowboys and how they came so unprepared? I mean, if there was ever a game to win and clinch the title and roll into the playoffs on a bit of a roll after that win against the Rams and that, gee whiz, America's team. Yeah, they're America's team, all right. I think they've lost that notation, that right to be called America's team a long time ago. And you know for sure that Jason Garrett is not going to be there next year. Jerry Jones finally realizing that he can't be running the team through a proxy coach, right? He's got to get somebody in there who definitely will take charge of the situation, and he's got to let that guy run the football operations, have full control. And Jerry, you got to back off, because the fact of the matter is you don't know football. You don't know football as much as you think you do. You may know some football, but you don't know enough to help your team win on your own merit. And let's be honest, that is how the Dallas Cowboys is run. Jason Garrett, just a complete fraud as a coach. I don't know how you look yourself in the mirror every day. I guess you're making the kind of money you're making, but gee whiz, some professional pride here at all? Holy cow, man! Like he's just terrible. And he would have showed some, might have gained a lot more credibility if he would have probably just cashed in a couple of seasons ago. That's how bad the Cowboys thing has been going, and I say that in light of all the talent that these guys have had. Right, some trades have been made. They got Amari Cooper to come in there. You draft Prescott. You draft Elliott. Your defense was definitely improving. It was one of the top defenses when the year started, and now here you sit, long shot to win the division. You need that win by the Giants, and you got to beat the Redskins, who also has kind of turned around and played a bit better football towards the end. So that game's not even a slam dunk for the Cowboys. But anyway, ask me if I'm crying about it. Not at all. Cowboys, one of the teams I could care less if they ever win another game. I'd like to see them have 10 Cincinnati Bengals seasons of 1 in 15 would just be perfect for me, because I've never been a Cowboys fan. Did kind of admire Troy Aikman. Got to give Aikman credit. He was he was a good quarterback, solid quarterback. And I'm not sure he's probably even a better announcer, because you really enjoy his broadcast and things like that. Some other questions from the NFL. Can Tennessee now holds on the 6th spot in the AFC playoff situation. Right now they would go to Kansas City if the playoffs were to start this upcoming weekend. Tennessee has Houston, Pittsburgh has Baltimore, and believe it or not, the Oakland Raiders. Wouldn't that be a story right there if the Oakland Raiders could pull off the playoff win? They need Tennessee to lose to Houston. That's very probable. They need Pittsburgh to lose to Baltimore. Highly probable. And they need Jacksonville to beat the Indianapolis Colts. That's in Jacksonville, and that is definitely a possibility as well, while the Raiders, I do believe, are in Denver. Now, that's not a slam dunk by any means. That is one of those ancient old rivalries, Denver and Oakland, and you can be rest assured that the Denver Broncos will be doing everything they can to make sure that the Raiders don't have a chance. But they're playing the late game, so they're going to kind of know coming into that game if they have a shot or not, right? They'll know at 2 o'clock, or what is it? Yeah, 2:50, 2:25 Western time, if they have a shot. And wouldn't that be something for the Oakland Raiders? You almost got to kind of root for them in a sense of the underdog sort of way, eh? I mean, they just had a great year. Starting with that whole Antonio Brown nonsense and getting him from Pittsburgh, giving up the draft picks they got from him, and then the whole nonsense that they had to deal with Antonio Brown. As we know, let go, goes to the Patriots. He plays one game, he gets let go from there, and you just got to tip your cap to John Gruden. He has done a great job of coaching that team this year, because I didn't have them winning a game. I honestly didn't. I did not think they would win a game at all, but they have turned it around, and it goes to show you If you can get the right kind of chemistry in your locker room, you can get that, every one for all and all for one type mentality. Good things can happen. And it certainly is a bit of a feather in Gruden's cap for the coaching job that he's done. Whether you like him or not, you have to give John Gruden credit for putting a pretty good season together, and things can only look up in Oakland. Derek Carr, I should say, bit of a better year, starting to feel good under the Gruden system, and here they're sitting. Could make the playoffs at 8-8. So it should be an interesting next weekend. Tennessee is playing Houston, we say. That's not easy. Tennessee's that's going to be a tough one there. Houston, probably be resting a little bit of their players because I don't think the game has any real significance to them. They're pretty well locked where they're going to be. They're going to play whoever, Tennessee or Oakland in that. So Buffalo, should say. Houston gets Buffalo, sorry. So wait and see. We'll wait and see. I'm kind of, now that I'm talking about it, I'll tell you, I would really like to see Oakland get in there just for the storyline. It would be great. Okay, so one last thing I want to cover on the NFL before we leave, and it's the whole, and I know Bladesy and T-Mac don't like to discuss this fact, but they're a little harder to accept reality, is this aspect of Tom Brady not being in New England next year. The latest rumor that's coming out is the fact that the Chargers will be releasing Phillip Rivers and the door being open for Tom Brady to come there. That makes sense. That I could see happening, and that is a team that does have some legit weapons. I don't think Brady would struggle as much because the guys that they have there are veteran-type players or will become veterans after another year under their belt. And he definitely has a different persona about him than Phillip Rivers would. But here's the funny thing. Would Bill Belichick go out and sign Phillip Rivers? Wouldn't that be something? Can you imagine the flip-flop on that? And then the Chargers and the Patriots in the AFC Championship next year. What a story that would be. So that's the latest one that's out there. I don't know. There's a lot adding up to I just don't see Brady coming back next year. I don't think Bill wants him to come back. I think he's ready to move on. He's ready to see what he's got in Jared Stidhart. But if he could pick up a Phillip Rivers for one more year to help mentoring Stidhart, which clearly isn't the same as Brady mentoring you, but I could see that happening. I really could. And this is why I cherish watching every game that I can now. The next one against Miami and however many playoff games or Super Bowl that they get to, I'm definitely going to cherish that because this year here more than any other, I think it's possible that Brady may have played his last days in New England. I hope it's not the case. That's not what I'm looking for. I know it may come across that way, but that's not the truth at all. I'd rather see Brady retire as a Patriot. His full career in the red, white, blue would be just fine with me. But it does make for a great storyline nonetheless. So anyway, that concludes our discussion of the National Football League and Week 16. In baseball, the Toronto Blue Jays go out and sign their biggest signing in team history. Can you imagine? Hyun Jin Ryu, $80 million for 4 years to anchor the Toronto Blue Jays pitching rotation. I don't know. What do you Blue Jay fans think? You happy with that signing? Is it something that you can get excited about? They also signed Tanner Roark. They also traded for Chase Anderson from Milwaukee. Not sure about the rest of the rotation, how that's gonna shape itself out. Trent Thornton, I think, is a candidate. I think there's the left-hander there, Robicki, or something like that. But nonetheless, the Jays, ponied up for some cash here and go out and get Ryu. I think the jury is still out on his health history. Is that somebody that, did you spend too much money on someone that's not a guarantee, right? Might you have been better off trying to make a trade for somebody in that? But, the Blue Jays are going the route of rebuild this time around. And, with Ryu being that guy, they're thinking, if he's our third starter in about 3 years' time, right, in the third year of the contract, then, that looks like a pretty good deal at that point in time. And I have to think that's kind of the thinking behind the signing, is that they're looking down the road as to how this thing is going to pan out. Obviously, they're probably aware of who else is going to become free agents down the road as well, and what they would have a realistic chance at getting. There's also the rumors of the Boston Red Sox and the Toronto Blue Jays getting together for a trade of one David Price, who once was with the Blue Jays before, as we all know, and they went on one of their playoff runs. Price was with them, and apparently he really enjoyed his time in Toronto. And so that kind of makes a little bit of sense. Not that you want to be trading within the division, but for the Red Sox, the Blue Jays aren't really a threat right at the moment. They probably are not going to be a threat for at least another couple of years till some of that great young talent that they have begins to take shape, right? So for the Red Sox, if they can dump some salary, get Toronto to take on maybe $20 million of that for the next 3 years. Red Sox take on 12, making up the $32 million. That helps them get under the luxury tax line that they're trying to get under. So interesting days. Things have kind of slowed down with some of the signings. The real one was probably the biggest news over the weekend that occurred. And so after all the big signings that went on the last couple of weeks, things have started to slow down for the Christmas haul, and probably not a whole lot's going to happen in the upcoming week or two. Probably back into January before we start seeing any other major signings. And still a lot of good players left on the market. But teams are showing that they're now spending money on quality. They will pay the big contract, but they'll pay the bucks, but it's going to be to quality guys. And younger quality guys, preferably, who deserve the money. Kind of a little bit like the National Hockey League, not as extreme with how they've kind of done things in their restricted free agency and stuff. But teams have, they're spending more wisely. And hence why you have, the Yankees, who held back for a while, knowing, looking down the line who potentially was going to be a free agent, opted not to go after anything last year. They waited till this year. And who do they go out and spend the big splash on? Garrett Cole. And that was smart money by the Yankees. It definitely was. It was a great signing for them. These days of just throwing out these big contracts, I don't see it happening. You have to earn it. And so for Ryu, even though that's a big deal for the Blue Jays, though it shouldn't. Rogers has all kinds of money. They should be one of the top, they should be in the top 5. The Blue Jays should be in salary. But they don't. They don't spend the money. And but this is a bit of a off the trail of what they normally do. So who knows? Maybe things are starting to change where the Blue Jays are concerned. So interesting signing for them. Like I said, if you're a Blue Jays fan, don't be afraid to chime in. Give us your comment on what you think about it. Does it help the Blue Jays? Do you see it as a long-term thing? Definitely it's not enough that it's going to make a difference this upcoming season. But nonetheless, maybe something that you can hang your hat on 3 years down the road. So, moving along, the National Hockey League and the Boston Bruins are having one hell of a rough December. My God. 3-9 so far. Where's my notes? 3-9. 4 overtime losses in those 9 losses. So you get a point. The European Hockey League is what it should be. It should be the EHL, the European Hockey League, because this is what the NHL does. It appeases the globalist. It appeases the European game. We have to give points because we have to give a point for participation. You know how it all rolls. This is the way it is in the National Hockey League. My God, where has this league gone to? Anyway, 3 in a row, 4 overtime losses. The Bruins cannot win in overtime, and they cannot win in a shootout. They look just completely like if they don't get it done in regulation, it's less than 20% chance that they're going to do anything in overtime. Real rough road. And I really don't have I don't even know what to say. And I've watched pretty well every one of those games. Watched pretty well every one of them. And they've come from behind on several of them. The Islander game, I think they came back on. What was the other one? Nashville. They were down against Nashville. They come back. The Blackhawks, of all people, and some of the games they lose. They lost to Ottawa. They lost to Chicago. Who was the other one? See if I can bring that up here. Where am I? Had my thing up there and it's gone. See if I can find it real quick. Nope. Thought I might be able to. If I move that over here. There we go. Let me just see. See their schedule. It's good there. And so Chicago, they've lost to Ottawa and they've lost to the Los Angeles Kings. I mean, that's just terrible. And the Kings and the Chicago loss were at home. And, I thought they had a real good chance here. Here they played 5 games at home. They've lost 4 in a row. They won the first one against Florida back on the 14th. Then they lose to LA, lose to the Islanders, lose to Nashville, and tonight they're playing the Washington Capitals, in which they're up 1-0. And with that being said, they're 7 points up on the Toronto Maple Leafs with a game in hand. So, for the rest of the division, it's good that the Bruins are going through this because now it's kind of brought everybody back to the pack a little bit. And, when you take a look at the standings and stuff, it's been an interesting, first 38. Geez, guys, we're creeping up on almost the halfway mark here. Early in January, we're going to be at that halfway or the end of December. The Leafs have kind of, rebounded back here a bit. 44 points. Montreal is at 40. Buffalo hanging in there. They've been a great story so far. And Florida, who obviously made all of the big changes in the offseason with the coach and the goaltending situation, they're competing hard for a playoff spot. Right now, I do believe if we had the playoffs today, Toronto and Florida would be playing in the first round. Capitals are still getting it done. What can you say about them? Islanders are hanging in. Who else is here? Philadelphia, team that I picked. I picked Philadelphia. I think I actually picked them to win the division. That was a bit of one of my long shots. Going out on a limb sort of thing. I was really going out on a limb. But Buffalo, Montreal sitting on the outside. Tampa Bay, what's happened to the Tampa Bay Lightning? You go from President's Trophy winner to now here you and gone in 4 straight against the Columbus Blue Jackets, and now here you sit 3, 2, 7. Wow, 8 points. 8 points out of a wild card spot. 8 points. Wow. Who would have saw that coming? Amazing. So, anyway, interesting in the East. St. Louis, is there any reason not to believe that the Blues can't defend their championship, that they can't defend their Stanley Cup title? Right now, you can't say. There's no real clear-cut reason. 52 points, leading the Western Conference. 52. Does that give them? No, they would still be behind Washington, second overall. So St. Louis still doing their thing, winning games. Look at the Coyotes and that big deal they came up with for Taylor Hall. Vegas is starting to find their game. They've both pulled ahead of the Edmonton Oilers. Panic-stricken here in Edmonton, I can tell you that after the start they had. You'd have thought, even when they were doing well, this fan base was still very critical of them. Like, how do you criticize a team that's been so bad for so long, and then you jump out to a pretty decent start, and you're talking about them like they're expected to win? Well, this team is not expected to win this year, Edmontonians. You are not expected to win. So right now, you should be enjoying the freaking ride, is what you should be doing. You are getting a lot out of players that just weren't expected to do a whole lot. That defense of theirs is about as no name as it gets. Darnell Nurse, still, he's not having a bad year, but he's still not, he should be a little more advanced, further along in his development than what he's showing. Larson, what a disappointment that's been. He was part of that Taylor Hall trade. He definitely has not lived up to his end of the bargain in that. The Bear kid, he has been a bright spot for Edmonton. Wasn't supposed to be starting the year. They thought they would keep him down the minors, but some real bad injuries in the first of it meant somebody had to come up. And so Ethan Bear was the guy to come up, and so far he's done pretty good. He's looked pretty impressive. Other surprises in the West, I mean, who would have ever thought right now Anaheim, Los Angeles, and San Jose anchoring the bottom of the Western Conference. I mean, that's hard to believe. Those three teams were what used to dominate the West. Nashville is sitting on the outside looking in. Who would have thought that? I mean, still some time. They're only 3 points out. Dallas is still in there. Calgary has made their way back after the whole Bill Peters episode that's gone on. Things seem to be settling down in Calgary, and that team just has a lot of talent. They have too much talent to not make the playoffs. I would be shocked if they missed the playoffs. They would have to have some serious injuries for that not to happen. So, I expect Calgary to, surpass Edmonton. I do. I think Edmonton at the end of the day is going to be down there fighting Nashville, Vancouver, maybe Minnesota for that last playoff spot eventually. It's been a good run for the Oilers, but you know what? The longer this season goes on, that's where, depth of a team really begins to show itself, and I just don't think, despite having the best player on the planet, it's not enough. They just don't have enough to be able to win a division or, be in that top three. I think they're going to have to figure out a way to win one of those wild card spots. Other teams of note, nothing that really sticks out to me. Pittsburgh's still hanging in there. Everybody keeps trying to write them off, but Sidney Crosby, any team that he's on, for sure they're going to be in there for the long haul. So, anyhow, how far did we get? Whoa, 40 minutes. Well, not bad, Duke. Not bad. All on your own here tonight. Definitely a challenge. Definitely much better when the boys are here with me. I really enjoy having them on. They're both very knowledgeable in their sports and stuff. So a Merry Christmas to them. Hope everything's going well for them over the holidays and stuff. And to all of you who have been watching us and following us along so far this year, we really appreciate the support that you give us, whether it be watching us live or checking the replay that we have on YouTube or on our Sunday Night Sports Guys Facebook page. We do appreciate that. We have a lot of fun with this. And again, as we always say, don't be afraid to offer up your comments, offer up your opinions. Those are important, and we'll make sure that they get brought on to the show. So everybody have yourselves a great Merry Christmas, and hopefully we're going to see you next week with the boys on the show as well. Hopefully family plans will allow for that, and we'll get into some New Year's type things, looking back at the past year and maybe looking ahead to 2020. So everybody have yourselves a great night, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.